Welcome to the Coffee with Counsel podcast with your host, Grace St. Clair. In each episode, we'll have guests such as real estate brokers, financial advisors, accountants, and attorneys who will share their expertise and real stories of how people get in and out of a mess in a variety of circumstances. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, qualityestateplanning.com. Now, here's the host of Coffee with Counsel, Grace St. Clair.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're having another episode of Coffee with Counsel with Grace St. Clair. I'm an estate planning attorney with Quality Estate Planning, St. Clair Law. And today my guest is going to be Joe Love, who's a Geriatric Care Manager that I work with quite a bit. So just a little bit to start out with what I do. So I help families and small businesses plan their estates so they can keep the state out of their business. And yes, I like to say, remember, it's never too early to plan your estate if you want to keep the state out of your business. And I created that because it is a double entendre. A lot of us have the state involved in our lives. And I don't know, we're in California, so obviously the state is very involved in our lives these days. But it's more important to keep the state out of your personal business because you'll be surprised how difficult it is. So our process is designed to protect your business. That means your personal business and your other businesses. Many of us have businesses with our families that we don't really think about as businesses. There are also rental properties that we own with other families, account service businesses sometimes, brick and mortar companies. Also, we have digital businesses like ad sales, computer websites, games on digital platforms, you name it. If you have something besides a W-2, it's a business and you need to plan it as well as your estate, or otherwise the state will get involved and you will be surprised at how invasive it can be. So who do we serve in general? Our process does work for everyone, but we serve families and small businesses in the South Bay. We do like working with businesses because most people forget how important these businesses are. But also your generational legacies are important to share with your families. And a lot of us want to share our assets with our families, but we don't realize what we have to do to make that happen. As soon as you have to get the court involved to pass a property to your family, you're surprised at what the court system is all about. It's designed to help you if you need it, but it's definitely a difficult process if you're not expecting it. So we represent the grantors of trust. We represent the trustees. We represent the successor trustees in a trust administration, personal representatives, or the executor of the probates. Probate is an estate administration that you get involved with if someone passes away. So without any plans in place, you may be in probate. That's what the living trust and the estate planning does. It protects you from these kinds of issues. So how did I get in this business in the first place? It's kind of a humorous story, but all my family is medically based, and I was a smart kid, so I was supposed to be a doctor. I loved the idea, but I hated science. My dad is a business person. My mom is a pharmacist. And so my mom and my grandmother were both females with careers before females had careers. My grandmother was a dietitian, so I learned very well that women are important to a family, and you can also contribute monetarily too. But when I got into science in college, I realized I didn't really like science that much. It's part of needing to be a doctor, but I remember telling my dad that I'm going to have to go to Mexico to get into med school with these kinds of grades. So I just stumbled onto the paralegal program at USC, and I started taking those classes, and I really did enjoy it. So I became a lawyer. But after I graduated, I didn't want to go to law school right away because I had already done so much to try to graduate in 4 years. I wanted to graduate in 4 years from high school graduation. I don't know why I had to do that, but it was part of my plan. So I ended up getting a job with a company in Beverly Hills who wanted to have someone handle their legal department. And they were looking for a paralegal. So I thought, great, this sounds like a wonderful place for me. But it was raining before that interview, pouring actually, and I was driving from Thousand Oaks to Beverly Hills. So it took me 2 hours to get there, and I was obviously 30 minutes late. So I was concerned I was going to get dinged right away. So I told them as soon as I walked in the door that this is what I wanted. And if you don't have something like this for me, then I think we should just can this or stop this whole interview and move on. And they were like, oh, thank God we need someone just like that. I must admit, I was shocked when it happened, but my dad always taught me to just bring it out in the open if something's really in trouble for you. And so I thought I got to mention the fact that I'm 30 minutes late. I mean, I couldn't use my cell phone to call them and tell them. So it was just a horrific experience, but the interview went wonderfully and the rest is history. But after I worked there for a couple of years, I was competing with, or I was actually the other side of one of our deals was US Air, which was PSA, which is now US Air. But anyway, the other side was a partner from American. And so he stole me away from that company and I went to work for him and realized as I was competing with the associates for work that I had to go to law school if I wanted to actually do well there. So I did buckle it up, went to law school, finished on the top of my class and went back over there. So I enjoyed working there. I learned a lot about how to practice law, but unfortunately, it's a lot of hours. If you want to have a life, it's very difficult to do. So when I realized that, I thought I've got to go out onto my own. If I wanted to have children, I had to do something different. So I did start my own path with my own firm and decided while I was making banks richer every day and protecting their interests, anyone could do that if they were smart. I needed to use my experience with families closer to home. So that's what I did. I created St. Clair Law, which used to be Grace St. Clair. And now I'm moving to Grace St. Clair Quality Estate Planning. So I'm very interested in letting you hear more about my um, colleagues that I work with who help me save my clients every day. So let me introduce Jill Love. Jill is a geriatric care manager. I speak to her often about certain issues that my clients have. So, Jill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Grace. It's such an honor to be here. Well, I am Jill Love, and I am a geriatric care manager. And a lot of people don't really know what geriatric care management is. And I can share more about that in detail in a little bit. But I'll tell you a little bit about what inspired me to get into the senior care industry. I had been laid off from a job during business school and kind of like you, Grace, I was working, but my heart wasn't really in the work that I had been doing. And so, in my search for finding a career, I realized that I wanted something where the knowledge of the head and the knowledge of the heart would be aligned, and something where I could really feel good and feel purposeful about what I was doing. And like you, Grace, I had always been interested in the healthcare field, or I thought that I was going to be a physician at one point and realized as we were getting into the nitty gritty of those courses that actually those classes were not for me and those were not the ones that lit me up. And communication was really what inspired me and what really made me tick. So I found the senior care industry and started in sales and marketing for a retirement community. And I loved working with older adults and their families. And many times I would see adult children coming in, taking a day or two off of work, totally frazzled and stressed out. And they knew that their parents needed some kind of help, but they didn't really know what the best solutions were or how to put a plan into place to help their aging parents. And so I saw this sense of overwhelm. And at the time, I was representing one very specific and very expensive care solution for a continuing care retirement community. And so that's what inspired my coworker at the time. It inspired the two of us to go back to school after I finished my business degree and went back to school to get my master's in gerontology, which is the study of aging and aging issues. And then the two of us started Peters and Love, which is a senior care consulting and ongoing care management firm. So, for the last 12 years, I have been working individually with families as well as many times it's the adult children, coaching the adult children through navigating the issues that their parents are facing. And then sometimes I have the privilege of working directly with the older adults and helping them manage their care and help advocate on their behalf. So, care management really encompasses many areas of senior care. But if you think of it um, like a wedding coordinator is to weddings and helping the bride and the groom just put together this wonderful event with many components and service providers, a lot of emotions going into it, big life transitions. It's in some ways, care management is kind of like being a wedding coordinator, but with aging issues and end of life issues. So I'm not the one to actually provide care in the home, but I can certainly provide trusted and vetted service providers. And I'm not an attorney, but I know wonderful attorneys like Grace St. Clair and who can provide excellent guidance to protect the older adults, but also their legacy for generations to come. So, like that,
Mhm.
I coordinate the logistics. I have some emotional distance from the issues. We don't have relationship dynamics that might be complicating the issues. And so I really just consider it a privilege to join the care team alongside family members to educate them, empower them to make good decisions, and walk alongside them as changes might come over time.
Yeah. It's interesting. You raised a couple of points that that are so true. Like we are the experts in our fields and they are complex. And I have a client right now that we're working with, and unfortunately, they feel like it's their job to do it themselves, and they've been making choices on their own. And logically, it makes sense, but it's not estate planning wise making sense. And so now they've had a petition filed against them because they've taken too long or whatever. And it's so true that trying to educate them that they need help
Yeah.
working this job, it's not something they do on a
Hmm.
regular basis. Just like we wouldn't I use this all the time when I say you wouldn't perform your own brain I wouldn't perform my own brain surgery. I don't know anything about that, but this is almost the level of what people are doing. And when they get, like, when they get a diagnosis of some sort, and then you spend 10 to 15 minutes with a doctor, and your kids aren't with you, and you tell them, "I have this," like, for instance, dementia.
Yeah.
Their kids don't even know what that is until they get most of estate planning is something you fall into
Hmm.
because you're at the position at the time or you hear about a friend going through it. But
Right.
we really need to consider these experts. That's why I
Hmm.
use Phil a lot in my practice because people get a diagnosis and they don't know what it is. The kids, of course, want to help mom and dad, but they don't even know what to do. And I just feel like when you're looking at a situation like that with a long term illness, that it doesn't have an end to it necessarily.
Hmm.
I want to know, like, I feel like my clients need to know how the money is going to be stretched over the years, where it needs the most important aspects to use the funds for in the beginning are different. And over time, I just feel like if we don't educate them in the beginning, then they're going to be surprised if they run out of money and then they're struggling again. So
Yeah.
there's so many things they really need to know about. They need to know about the disease, what that means. They need to know what that means for mom and dad. They need to know what it means for themselves as well, and
Hmm.
that reduces the overwhelm, and the overwhelm can just kill you if you have another job. If you're taking care of your own family, it's like having another job, right?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And you don't know what you don't know. And so
Yeah.
to your point, it is so important to surround ourselves with trustworthy advisors who can help us to see where are our blind spots. What do we need to understand and what do we need to know in order to make good decisions? And whether that's children of aging parents, empowering their parents and guiding them, or whether it's us working directly with the older adults, it's really highlighting to them here are your true needs. And I can identify these needs because I don't have my blinders on of being your daughter or being your niece or something like that. And so I can really understand what the needs are. I can see what the maybe complicating relationship dynamics might be or some challenges. And I can understand what are the needs and preferences that are guiding decision making and maybe the values of the person. But then, all importantly, what is the budget? And so, if we don't have a good understanding of what the true resources are, I really can't give good recommendations because I don't want to be recommending the Ritz Carlton when we really need to be looking at a Motel 6 or vice versa, right? So the recommendations are really going to be tailored based on each person's set of circumstances and those factors. And so getting the right people who are going to ask the right questions, who are going to uncover the appropriate information is just crucial so that we're not wasting time, we're not wasting money, and most of all, we're not creating a heartache that doesn't need to be created.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you do so well is helping the family understand the situation that they're in and
Mm,
where it's going to go over time. Because I think they really don't know. Like, does mom need help dressing? That's an easy thing. Oh, let's get someone to come in. But is it 3 times a week, 5 times a week? Who's going to help mom get dressed? Is she going to change her entire way she dresses? My mom is a lot like me, and she would look like this right now if you saw her. She's 94 and, she bugs
Right.
me all the time. I can't get my necklaces on, and it makes me laugh because I know how she is. Because I have a similar problem with one of my fingers, but still. The point is, so what do? Stop wearing necklaces? Like, I suppose I have a client who started wearing just sweats all the time. And,
mm,
I just don't wanna live like that, but that's what she chose to do because she had, rheumatoid arthritis. And
mhm,
so she's changed her entire way of living because that's all she can do, but she doesn't have the same kinda help with their family members. But anyway, the point is people need to understand what that illness is going to create, even if it's not a serious like illness, like I don't know, dementia is pretty serious. But the point is, it's not a cancer. Let's say it's not going to require chemo treatment or whatever.
mhm,
It's almost
mhm.
more debilitating because they don't know what's going to change. Like, how do you do that? And can you do it 3 days a week or do you need five? That's the stuff that you can help them understand. And maybe you start with 2 days, and maybe you have them just take a shower once a week. I don't know, but that's something that you do very well.
Well, thank you. And that's one of the health conditions that I really enjoy the most in terms of coming alongside family members and the person who is experiencing this cognitive decline to understand, okay, what's working right now and what's not working, and how can we better meet your needs so that you have quality of life, even as that cognitive decline continues over time. So, with dementia, you have not just cognitive decline, but you actually have functional decline as well. And so, somebody needs to bridge the gap between what the care recipient is able to do on their own and all those things that just simply need to get done. So, is it going to be a family member? Does the person live with a spouse or an adult child? Or do they have very involved neighbors or friends that are part of an unofficial care team? And then how can we supplement that with a paid care team? So, like you were just saying, maybe it is just starting with a little bit of assistance, a little bit of paid support a couple of times a week. And then as needs progress, we can gradually add on more and more care. But then financially, of course, there becomes this tipping point where adding cost of care for one on one home care that may or may not be the best way to meet the needs of the care recipient. So we have dialogue, we have ongoing conversations about what's working and what's not working, so we can adjust the care plan accordingly over time. And sometimes that does mean moving to assisted living or to memory care in the situation of dementia. But the nice thing is, usually we have time to forecast this and plan so we can be proactive rather than being reactive and creating a lot more stress because we're not planning ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. You do need some kind of a care plan, even if it's rudimentary. And Jill can help people do that. And then you do change over time. And that's great that they could consult with you and say, wow, it's not working anymore. What do we do next? They need that. They don't realize they need that in the beginning, but they really, really need that. So I counsel my clients all the time when there's a cognitive decline. Like, what does that mean to you? Where is it going? Let's get Jill involved. But as soon as they get a diagnosis, for instance, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but Jay Leno is actually trying to get a conservatorship for his wife
Mhm.
because of dementia. With all the lawyers around him, you would have thought that he would have been counseled in some way to have power of
Right.
attorney advice. But let's talk about that in a minute. Um, I wanted to say, just first of all, Jill and I were preparing for this, and we were thinking, how did we first meet? And so we wanted to talk about a little bit about how we met because I think that's we met through SSG. That's the only
Mhm,
place, right? Yeah.
mhm.
So we're both involved in this group, which is a senior specialist group, which is under the Foundation for Senior Services.org. And it's kind of like Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's group, but on a smaller scale. So the idea is it's for all seniors. Alzheimer's is for one type of disease, but it's kind of like your clearinghouse for all senior issues. And what we want to be is the local centers hub for all needs that you might have as seniors. So we're in the South Bay chapter. We have I think we have 10 chapters in the Southern California area. Right now, we're still in Southern California. And we're hoping to go big, but come on, we got to get Southern California down first. But anyway, we're across the Southern California area here, and we have senior specialists, which are vetted in every area that seniors might need. And so if they call this special number at the Foundation for Senior Services.org, which is located on Google, you'll get someone in your area that you can talk with about these issues. So um, we started a long time ago. I started the group when it first started. It just happened to be in my office, and the other estate planning attorney moved, and they needed someone to step in. And I said, fine, I'll visit. Next thing you know, I'm running the group. What did you call it? Voluntold?
Yes.
It was voluntold to be president. I was trying to help one of our partners who was I was gonna be the second in command. I ended up being the first, but, and then he ended up leaving the group. Well, then I was really alone doing it, but anyway, it was a pleasure to do, and we went through COVID together, which was when we couldn't really help seniors, which was so hard. We ended up writing letters to them,
Yeah.
just to say, "Hey, we're thinking about you," even though they didn't know who we were, but we had to do something because we couldn't meet with them anymore. So, tell us a little bit about why you got into the SSG group.
Sure. Well, first of all, I love working with and recommending service providers who have a service component or a philosophy of service in what they do. And so, one of the things that I love most about the senior specialist group is that we educate older adults and their families in the community. We offer free in person seminars and online webinars. Grace, you and I have done several of those together over the last few years. And it's just been really a wonderful way to connect with community members and put some of these aging issues to be top of mind when many times things are simmering on the back burner and it's a crisis that moves things to the front burner. But the more information we can put out there to older adults and their families, let this information sink in so they can make decisions better before there's a crisis. It's just a gift to be able to be a part of that. And the senior specialist group helps empower that. And then, of course, getting to know service providers on a regular basis so that we have a personal relationship. And it just makes working together on behalf of mutual clients so much better.
Yeah, and we all see each other once a month and beyond that too, and it's nice. Like our last luncheon we had was really fun because we all got to hang out first before we did something and talk to each other about things that were not necessarily involved with seniors, but they
Yeah.
usually end up getting there because we are always working with seniors together.
We
No,
don't
I
treat
def no, it doesn't come. Yeah, you can't take that hat off. But anyway, it's so true. We do a lot of education and we'd like you to know more about our education. So go to the Foundation for Senior Services.org. I know it's a mouthful. Every time we talk about it, it's two sections of words to go together, but it's very important. We need more of people coming to our meetings because the education is what you all need out there. You have no idea what you're facing. And if it wasn't taught in high school, and they don't even have time to teach English anymore in high school, right? We don't know that much about it until we're thrown into it. And like Jill says, the survival of the fittest is what makes you choose the expert that you have. But also, if you knew in advance what you were going to face, like we did this one thing recently about how do you keep your mom or dad from driving? That was one of our best programs because how do you stop them from driving when you know they shouldn't be in the car? And they wanna still travel, and of course, you want them to be independent, but you don't want them to hurt people, And, it was an interesting program. I don't know if that's on tape, but it's definitely something
I
worth
think
learning.
I think it was recorded, and that's one thing that people wouldn't necessarily know to Google search a certified driving rehab therapist, but that is a special training and designation for an occupational therapist who can do a behind the wheel assessment along with a full clinical assessment to provide a neutral third party's recommendation on whether somebody is safe to drive or not.
Yeah.
And so it's
Neutral third party.
connecting
Let me
resources like
interrupt you real quick right there. I love that idea. They're a neutral third party. that
Yeah.
you can blame
Yeah.
for the decision, which is why
Yeah.
you need.
It's so important because we know that many times one of the most influential people in part of the care team is the doctor. And so, oh, the doctor said I need to do this, or the doctor I said I can't do that. They listen. The older adults listen to their doctor. It's a little bit harder sometimes for that same person to listen to their children who are recommending, mom or dad, you need to stop driving, or mom or dad, we think it's time for you to move. So when you do remove that emotional connection and you have a trusted, credible third party providing that guidance, it can help smooth out those discussions.
I prefer the idea of blaming them for the results. So that you, as a child, let's see,
Hey,
that's the
yeah,
value,
it's
right?
not me, it's them.
Yeah, exactly. Because you need something. Come on, let's be real. Okay. A couple of other things. So let's talk about how Jill actually does what she does, because it's better to uh, talk about it in the context of a person dealing with something. We had worked for one of my clients who is blind. And the very interesting thing about this is I learned so much about blindness working with this woman. But I actually represented her brother. And he said, I take care of my sister. She's blind, but she's fine. She's very self sufficient. And I thought, okay, fine. And then he showed me what he had for her set aside. And I immediately knew that he doesn't have the right thing because no one knew about estate planning. So
Mm,
he had gone to the bank and said, I want to save some money for my sister. And they put him in an annuity, which she would get automatically if he died. The problem with that is she's blind. That means she takes governmental assistance. So she's going to lose all of her benefits if that went forward. So I told him immediately that was the wrong choice, that he needed to fix that, that we found him something else that would work. But she needed a special needs trust because she was blind. So he never knew anything about that. And the person at the bank, even if they have, it was Merrill Lynch, even if they have Merrill Lynch, it depends on what they ask. They obviously didn't ask him the right questions. Maybe he didn't tell them she was blind,
mm.
but that's pretty clear, I think, and a very important question to ask. So a lot of times these people don't ask the right things, which is why you need someone who knows you better than that. But anyway, after he passed away, I had never even seen her before. She showed up at the funeral. I met her. Lovely person. She was, I think, 60-ish, 60, late 60s probably. Very self-sufficient, but she did have someone there with her. But then getting to know how hard it was for her to operate without sight, I learned so much. Like when I went, so anyway, here's what happened. She fell in her house, and shortly after he passed, and she was on the floor for 4 days. She had a seeing eye dog, but there was no one visiting, so he just kept close to her. She had 4 cats. They all went crazy, obviously, because she wasn't able to take care of them at the time. She was on the floor. Somebody came by and somebody called her and thought, oh, she must be walking the dog, so she didn't worry. The next person was supposed to come. The people, the cleaning ladies were supposed to come, and I guess they didn't. The dog didn't bark or something didn't happen, so they left. There was no one there. And then finally, when she didn't go ride her horse, the horse stall boarding group called us. So yes, she rode horses as a blind woman. She was a championship rider, which really surprised me. But at least they knew her well enough to know that she would never not miss her riding time.
Mhm.
And so that's how they found her. And the police went over there, and of course the house was a mess. 4 days later, big problems. Anyway, she had had a hip replacement, so she had an infection now in her hip that had grown since she fell, and that was one of the problems that she ended up having. So she went to, you know, she ended up getting the diagnosis. She had to have 12 weeks of an antibiotic. So they put her in transitional care, and everything went to crap. I didn't find out because one of the kids, the step kid, was helping her, and she was trying to make her vegetarian, because that's what she was. Just let her eat anything. At this point, she needs to get better. But because it wasn't working, I went out there to see what was going on. It wasn't close to me at all, but that's how I found a geriatric care manager, which before I knew Jill, to help me because my rate was much higher than hers. And somebody needed to advocate for this patient. But I sat there at the bed and I saw the guy come in and he's giving her one med and I knew she needed two. And I said, "Why are you just giving her one?" And he said, "Oh, her kidneys can't take the other one." And that was the one she really needed to get rid of the infection. And I was like, "Wait a minute, she's been under your care. How
Mhm.
come her kidneys aren't working right?" Then I found out that they didn't the people that were coming in to take her, vitals didn't realize she was blind, they were ignoring her, treating her like she was dumb. It's one thing after another, so we had to take her back to the emergency room to get her out of there, she was gonna die, I could see that she was almost in with pneumonia at that time. And, of course, she wanted to die anyway because her brother died, but I just thought,
Yes.
I couldn't allow her to pass away without help. If she did eventually, I thought that was okay, but I could not watch that happen without trying to save something. So she went back into the hospital, and before she went to the next hospital, the transitional care facility, I went out there with the geriatric care manager who Jill now has helped me with, and we met with the skilled nursing facility to make sure that they knew what she needed. And so they put a sign on the bed, all sorts of things that they did. But I was shocked that no one thought of this before when you have a blind patient. But I learned a lot when I visited her the first time after she got out of the hospital. I went to go see those cats, and of course I'm a cat person, so I love the cats. As soon as I walked in, I was like, "Oh, your cat's running around or doing something like that." The cats heard me and knew that I saw them. And the look on their face was like, "She can see it! Oh my god." It was so funny. Um,
Oh.
never seen it before in my life, but it was hysterical 'cause the 4 cats could do whatever they wanted because she didn't know unless they brushed up against her where they were. So they were having the cats meow in that place.
Oh, yes.
I learned a lot about what you can't do, like, she didn't know if the food in her refrigerator had expired. There's all sorts of things that you see, and the problem was, did she have a life alert on her? And she did, and it didn't work for some reason, and I told her, "We need 2. We need to have 1 with you and 1 when it's charging," because she would take it off to charge it. But when she's taking it off, it's not on her, and she
Right.
can't see the little light saying it's charged or not. So all sorts of little things about working with a blind person. But another thing that I reached out to Jill for was she's getting older now, obviously. She's lived, since when was that, 2014?
Mm.
10
Almost 10
more years later. Yeah,
years.
she's doing great, and, but she's getting older, and we have to the trustee now of the trust is working with her to figure out and he's not an expert, right?
Mm.
Tom, have you met Tom? You've
No.
met Barb.
Yeah.
The trustee, we didn't need to have him there, but anyway, Tom is just a regular guy, he was a welder, so he doesn't know, and the idea is we have to help him understand what his job is, and so we all 3 of us met about how to help her in the future, so can you tell us a little bit about that conversation?
Sure. Well, like I do with many new clients, and of course, having another care manager on the team already was so helpful because we need to find out what are the needs, what are the unmet needs, and here it's realizing we need to be forecasting for new care needs, more physical disability, maybe some cognitive disability that are layered on top of her visual disability that she already has and has been managing well over time. So some of it is identifying are there supports that we could bring in to make aging in place in her home environment more viable. And as she becomes physically more weak or has issues like her hip replacement, what can make navigating her home more safe and comfortable and more confident for her? But then also, what type of engagement, activities, and connection does she have? She has some emotional connection to her pets. She has that horse riding habit, which really saved her life in a way because the people who knew her there were the ones who really sounded the alarm about her. But what opportunities for improving quality of life can we implement for her, or at least be forecasting in the future? And so, one of the things that we talked about was a dog. The fact that even though she had cats, she really wanted to have a dog, but finding and adopting an appropriate dog for her would have been really important. So, it's not necessarily just those most basic things called activities of daily living, making sure she's safe with that, or instrumental activities of daily living like bill paying and medication management and grocery shopping. We can meet all of those needs, but then there's that whole section of what quality of life means to somebody. So being able to tackle some of those questions and brainstorm together as a group, we don't often get to do that with an estate planning attorney, but Grace, it was just so wonderful to be able to do that with you.
Yeah, another thing that we have to deal with is when is she going to get to the point where she can't be alone anymore in her house?
Mhm,
And then where is that going to be best for her? And
mhm.
that was another thing that we chatted about because she's at the point now where if we need to move her, we've already learned that the horse was getting much older. It was one of her famous horses for a long time. So she had to give up riding that horse and she knew that. So luckily, she was okay with that, but the other thing now is, can she live alone anymore? We just don't know. So
Yeah.
that's something that we're working on daily with her and trying to figure out when that's gonna change, and if it changes, how to change it. Let's talk about one more client that we worked with too, which is, on a little bit of a different level. This is just a typical, gentleman who had did he have a stroke? He
Yeah.
something like that. He had a stroke and he was recovering, and
Mhm.
my client is the daughter, and we were trying to figure out if he could get on Medi-Cal or not, and, part of that was, difficult because we're right in the middle of the change of the Medi-Cal rules, and he did qualify, but there were all sorts of challenges there. Tell us a little bit about how you helped them.
Sure. Well, and also just in general, a lot of families don't really know what types of benefits are covered by Medicare, which is the health insurance aspect of it, and then Medi-Cal, which is California's version of Medicaid. And that is more you're eligible based on your financial need for this. And so, understanding does this person qualify based on their assets and Medi-Cal's rules have changed just as of 2024. Assets aren't as important in terms of a threshold compared to their monthly income. So, having those types of discussions so that families have a better understanding of the types of resources that are available to help pay for care, but also knowing that here are some areas where you, as the care recipient or the family, might need to find a private pay source to be able to meet the person's care needs. And then
Yeah,
again, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and the daughter was providing most of the care because she
Mhm.
had her own, job that she could manipulate timing with, so that was useful for her. We're
Yeah.
running a little bit out of time, but I wanted to go over a couple of things. What are some things I can do to set myself for successful aging?
Ah, for successful aging. Yes. Well, I love that question because it's a forward thinking question. And again, it's being proactive instead of reactive. So I would say start by doing a self assessment. Where am I now? And again, let's ask these questions in just general terms. What's working and what's not working? Let's think, how is my physical health? Do I have any particular diagnoses that probably are going to become more challenging to manage over time or as I collect new diagnoses, whether that's high blood pressure, high cholesterol, there's a history of dementia in my family, history of stroke or cancer, anything like that that will help us understand how we can be planning for the future. But then also, what are my priorities in life? What is quality of life to me? Is it being able to travel the world? Is it being able to go out and try new restaurants and to visit my friends? Is it to be near my grandchildren? What are these things that are going to be the priorities in your life that we can build supports around as your physical or maybe even your cognitive needs might progress over time? So taking stock of those needs, but also the resources that you have, just like this family that we were just talking about, will family be able to provide you some unpaid support? And if so, do you want to make it a priority to live near your loved ones if you don't already live with them? So
Yeah,
make
speaking of family, one thing I wanted to mention was in our family, my sister, hope she doesn't look at this, but anyway, she's not the best choice. Don't look for this. She's not the best choice, and that's okay. Not everyone is the best caretaker. Some
yeah,
people are just not as good at it as others. And if you're that person, it's okay that you're not the best at it. You should be the daughter or son of your family members and show up in that way. someone else should be able to do all those other hard jobs. So I'm going to have you back, Jill. We've got so many things we didn't
I
get
know.
to. For sure, before you do anything, you have to have your legal plans in place because your kids can help you at all, like Jay Leno.
Mhm.
Jay Leno was going to court to help his wife with all that money and attorneys around him. He's got to get a conservatorship for her.
That's right, and unfortunately, I have worked with a few families who missed that window of opportunity where the older adult could have easily put together some documentation to empower their son or their daughter or their niece or their nephew or a friend even to make decisions on their behalf when they were no longer able to do so for themselves. And it created so much heartache, but it also cost so much time and so much money when we don't have those basic legal documents in place. So, one of the first things that I do is ask if they have any estate planning done. Have they reviewed it recently to make sure that it's still, honoring their current wishes and needs and priorities? So, if not, I always want to make sure that an estate planning attorney is one of those first referrals that I make, just to make sure that we can all make good decisions and then advocate based on the authority granted to us.
Yeah, you need legal authority to do anything,
Mhm.
especially banks. So anyway, this has been a great session. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Jill Love of Peters and Love. Grace St. Clair, I'm an estate planning attorney. As you know, we will be doing more of these, so please check in with us on a regular basis. There's more to learn about everything with regard to aging and estate planning. Um, so thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it. See you
Thank you
soon.
so much for having me.
You've been tuning in to the Coffee with Counsel podcast with your host, Grace St. Clair. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, qualityestatePlanning.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.